lobbying with our government too with regards to real estate in Canada. Yeah.
Wow,
and so have any of you owned property before? No? Okay, good.
Not hearing it.
Yes.
So you're all pretty green then, right?
well, maybe not all of us.
Not all of us.
Some, I think, I'm sure some people have some properties, maybe not in Canada, but in the
In
US.
America.
Yes, and
America.
while maybe one or two people have properties in Canada.
Okay.
Yes. So Glenn and Ingrid, I'm so sorry. We were just supposed to give some sort of background and introduction to you guys before we allow you to, address us. And it's going to be a question and answer session, right? So we have a couple of questions for you guys. And
Okay.
then because we understand that, it might be a long shot to tell you to do some sort of presentation and all that. Yeah. So just before we continue, I will just I have something about you guys that Jeje sent to me. So I'm just going to read it out to people and then some sort of introduction and let you continue from there.
Okay.
So Glenn and Ingrid, they have a company called Glen Ingrid Real Estate Firm, and they've been licensed under the Real Estate and Business Brokers Act, REBA, since 1975 to sell real estate in Ontario, primarily London. Since November 1989, Glen has been licensed as a broker of record and broker of record / owner of Glen Gordon Real Estate Limited. Am I right?
Correct.
Yeah, completing courses in rural recreational property, real estate law, appraisal, commercial mortgage financing, and real estate administration. Their belief is that honor and integrity must be central to every transaction. And they served on the board of directors for London St. Thomas Association of Realtors from 1994 to 2004. Glenn was president in 2003, and then they have numerous awards, which includes the prestigious Lean Coupland Outstanding Service Award in 2004, Community Service Award in 1999, and they served on and chaired several committees, including professional standards, political action, one national award in 2003, community relations, a broker advisory committee, and the Fund Spill Committee, curling bond spill for mission services to help the homeless. Their specialties are residential valuation, investment, and relocation. So Glenn, welcome. Just a short introduction of who we are. We're just a community of mostly Nigerians, Africans living in North America, which is United States of America and Canada, to be precise. So we have, we just come together to share knowledge and insights about, this group is finance group, everything finance from real estate financing, stock trading, everything tax and all that. But today we'll just, we're lucky to have you to come talk to us about real estate and then investments in North America, which especially in Canada, which we know that it's your expertise. 1975 is a very long time. And so we, as I said earlier, we are happy to have you here. And then we have a couple of questions for you. And we have, so just for our time, we will try as much as possible to take as much questions as we can. But before then, we just, if you have some sort of remarks or some sort of statements you want to give us, we are all ears.
Okay. Well, welcome to all you Nigerians. We've been there, I've been there 3 times and went there twice. We went there for Alpha and Tolu's wedding in 2013, and which is how I think we met JJ's. So we have red soil on our shoes, but we love it. We love the country, and we love the people too. But yeah, so that's part of our background too. So we know that, well, we have a strong faith too. And I was over there with Reinhard Bonnke.
Oh, wow.
In 2006. It was February 2006. And then went back 2010 and then again 2013. So we have a little bit of background there. And we've been anywhere from Abuja to Oguri to Lagos. So
All over.
we've been around a little bit, drove the countryside.
Interested too in Nigerian real estate, because real estate is kind of what everybody's common denominator is in the world, to own the shelter and own for investment.
Yes.
And so it's a great place to put your money. Let's put it that way. And once you have it paid for, they can't take it away from you. So that's a good thing.
So we know a little bit about American real estate as well. I just spoke to the mayor of London, who moved to Washington, D.C. With her husband back probably 10 years ago. No, longer, 15 years ago now. And so she's given me a bit of background of what's going on in different cities in the U.S. as well. So anyway, so does that give you enough for now? And then you can just fire off some questions and we'll answer the best we can.
All right. All right. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'll just go straight into the question and answer session, and then just answer as many as you can and as much as you can. So I guess the first question would be that we've been seeing a lot of upsurge in the price of real estate in North America, because I was watching some news and then I saw the same thing happening in Nashville. I used to live in Nashville before moving to Canada, and then the same surge in prices, in America, even in Canada, and then there's a word that keeps coming: bubble. Is this a bubble? Is it going to burst at some point? Or do you think I guess the first question, do you think the surge in prices is justifiable? And then do you think it's a bubble that is going to burst at some point? And what's the lesson, or what kind of effects will it have in the long run? And what do you advise us, people that are first-time buyers or people that don't have a house before or a home before, to do, especially at this time of the surge in price?
I'm assuming everybody is praying people here.
Yes.
Because we do our business that way. It's we ask for God's wisdom all the way through it. I've been through 3 upsurges and 3 declines in our marketplace. London is a blue chip market for Ontario for sure, quite possibly Canada, because if we have any decline at all, it's only 10%. It's not like Toronto, which can be 25% within a blink of an eye. In 1992, Toronto dropped in right away, like 25%. They also dropped 15% when they stopped foreign investment back 3 years ago, 2018. So, and that they recovered probably 6 months later. But that's just the way Toronto is. It stops and goes, and
it's more volatile.
It's more volatile, but it also has a lot of foreign investors that come into that city.
And Vancouver, also Montreal.
Have a lot of that international impact. Bubble, we only actually stepped into a bubble, I would say, here in London and maybe in Ontario, probably in the last year. And a bubble always bursts. And I remember there was a young lady working for CFAN, Christ for All Nations, Reinhard Bonnke, in Florida in 2006 when I met her. She was really concerned that she was going to miss out because they were saying they were mortgaging for more than the value of a property on the idea that it would be worth more 3 months later. And that bubble really burst because that was artificial financing.
Yeah, by 2008, it just crashed.
2008, it went flat. But I told her not to panic because every bubble does burst. So the thing is, timing is God's timing, and you need not worry that you'll never be able to get into the marketplace, because one thing about North America is there's usually, in order to spur on the marketplace, they know that they have to get the first-time buyer to be able to afford it. And Canada has been good for coming up with grants for that kind of thing in order to start it off. We don't need that right now, although our Prime Minister is talking about giving first-time buyers grants. And
Well, not really grants, money back, but
it'll be a second mortgage.
the government basically is coming in partnership with you on your property, which is a very dangerous thing to happen.
It's socialistic.
Has a very socialistic tendency. And so let's put it this way. I wouldn't trust that kind of rebate scheme. I would call that definitely a scam.
Yeah.
But by our own government. And so you're better off to have your own down payment, your own financing, everything else, than to kind of go into partnership where they were talking about giving 10 or 15% back towards the down payment, but they become basically second mortgage holders. And a second mortgage holder, at any time, if you default on a mortgage on their kind of thing, they say, oh, you don't have to pay it back until you sell your house or whatever. But if they call in that mortgage, which they can do as second mortgage holders, then you can possibly lose your home and all your equity. So it's not, on the surface, everybody goes, oh, isn't that wonderful? It's not the same kind of plan that we've ever had in Canada before. But it is a plan that I've seen in East Germany where my relatives come from. So I would be very cautious on that in Canadian marketplace for first-time buyer. It's called a first-time buyer home incentive that Trudeau here has been chatting about. And I would say keep chatting, but
we're probably going to lobby against that anyways. And the real estate boards across Canada are the strongest lobbying group in Ottawa. Because we rally all the provinces together in one association, which no organization is quite that organized in Canada. And usually the main things we lobby for is homelessness and affordable housing and property rights. And so every time the government, when the first Trudeau was here, he took away all of our property rights. He forgot to rewrite it into the new constitution. So there's nobody watchdogging that except for the real estate boards across Canada. So anyway, so we really take that on as our job nowadays. So it's a big deal here. Now the worst I've ever seen, if it is a bubble, the worst I've ever seen was in 1981, 82, when the interest rates went to 22% here. And the reason they went that high is because there was more money in investments, but no money that they had missed the cycle where the money was not available it was all invested, but it was not coming due to be able to be turned over. So there was no money in the banks. So they just put the interest rates way up there. What happened even then, London only dropped 10%. And about a year later, the government came up with half the down payment they would give you, but it was only for first-time buyers. So they did that then, and they said that would never happen again. So it's highly likely it won't happen where the interest rates go that high. and the recovery in both of our countries is it's slow. Most times they balance, it levels out first, and if there's any decline, it declines a little bit. What happens is sometimes buyers will ask for a few more as the market balances out and there's more properties for sale, and then it does balance out. What happens then is that the buyers are more, can ask for a few more things in the transaction, whether it's having the seller pay something out or who knows what. And you usually have more time. Here, we don't do any contracts for the last few years that have condition on financing, condition on home inspection, condition on being able to get insurance. All three of those are important. The one for insurance was really important because there was a lot of grow-ops in houses up here for marijuana grow-ops, and insurance companies won't finance a marijuana grow-op because of the water used in the house
And the mold issues.
and the mold issues. So they just wouldn't find, if you can't get insurance, you can't get financing.
They'll even if, let's say, well, now marijuana is legal in Canada, but before and even now, if a house has been busted and it even only had 200 plants as opposed to a few thousand plants, the insurance companies are very hesitant because they're all still lumped into the same thing. And so that's why you have to be really careful about the history of the house, that if you're working with a realtor, that they're experienced, that they have some past knowledge, that they know how to make sure the house never had a problem, never had a grow up in it or anything like that. Because if you don't have insurance, if you cannot get house insurance, you cannot get a mortgage. Because the mortgage companies will not loan on anything that is not insurable for fire or anything else. And also, if there has been a grow up in the house and the insurance company, somebody says, sure, I'll give you insurance. If you ever had a water problem, let's say your roof leaked, like we had several years ago, ice and water damming happening in our roof. And so the water ended up, and we had a thaw in the middle of January and a rain that night, and it came through the walls. If we if this had been a grow up previously at any point, even 20 years ago, the insurance company would say, I'm so sorry, the mold was a pre-existing problem. So it's just a good idea to stay away from them if you want house insurance.
And here we can do a lot of historical check on the house, on what it sold for and that kind of thing. The US is easier on public sites to be able to find out what a property was sold for or whatever in the past. But what we have found is we have a lot of Toronto realtors who aren't making it in Toronto. So they're coming here and selling a client a house here for way more than most of our clients would pay. But they're also, they're not knowledgeable on our marketplace. So they're selling houses for prices in good areas. They're selling houses in bad areas for prices that you would pay for a house in a good area in London, which means that they're paying exorbitant prices in those areas that don't even have schools that have good curriculum in them, that are the same that would encourage, let's say, for post-secondary education, after high school education. There's certain parts of the city that encourage that. And then there's other parts of the city that don't encourage that at all. They're just happy to get them through high school and that's it. Well, those houses are selling in those neighborhoods, and these folks don't have any clue what their realtor has sold them until their kids go off to school, and then they'll find out. But it's unfortunate because they may be overspending for something that won't carry the value in the future.
And that's why it's really, really necessary to have somebody who is from the area,
Right.
who actually are very experienced and are full-time realtors, not just part-time here and there or retired who think they're going to supplement their income because they don't have the knowledge that you need, especially if you have young families. You want to know which neighborhood you're in. You want to know, you were talking about prices being justifiable. In some of these neighborhoods, they're not justifiable.
Mm.
Like in London, there was one house, I just saw it in early this year, and I just shake my head, and I feel so sorry for the person who purchased it, because it was a flip. And by flipping, we mean somebody buys it for a low price, they fix it all up. I showed one this morning in St. Thomas, not far from here. Great house. They did a really good job at repairing and flipping a 130-year-old house. But I said to my client, I'm so sorry, but I don't want to sell you this house because of the neighborhood. That's what's my problem. I said, well, let's just take a look around the corner here. And I have actually taught in that school, because once in a while I do supply teaching just for fun. And I said, it's a really tough school, very tough neighborhood. The house looks great. It's the highest price in the neighborhood. And my suggestion is, let's go find something else for you, because this isn't where you should be. And so, because she was a single gal in her 60s, and, you know, there's just, and here in London, there was a property that had been flipped, fixed up, beautiful home, everything. It sold for an unbelievable price for the neighborhood. And the person who bought it from Toronto thought they got themselves a really lovely home, all new, all redone, but it happens to be sitting next to a crack house. And so that's not where, and I had met a woman just the week before in another open house that, you know, said, oh, I want out of that neighborhood. So it's really important to have experienced realtors who have integrity and who operate with ethical practices, and also have, just because they might be the top agent in their city or whatever, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're
Good.
a good realtor and a knowledgeable realtor.
Some of them are just interested in volume sales. Let me give you just quickly,
Okay.
you buying anywhere in North America, the rule of thumb to watch is properties that retain and usually appreciate at the fastest rate are around colleges, universities, colleges, and hospitals, because that's where you have doctors, you have professors, you have teachers, you have professionals in those areas. So you're better off to buy the worst house on a good street than the best house in a bad neighborhood. And a lot of people who are flipping properties right now are making a lot of money on flipping properties that are in bad neighborhoods. I mean, you see a few TV shows in the States, and it's good because they're transitioning a whole town, which is great. But you have to, there's other things that have to move with that, and that's good schools and hospitals and everything else that amenities in the neighborhood that you really want to have as well. Is that it? I know that's a long, we answered a whole bunch of questions probably.
Exactly. I was gonna say that you answered a bunch of questions, and then you talked about the proximity to schools, hospitals, and professionals. And somebody asked a question about the difference in the property value in South London and North London. Would that be, is it because of the numbers of schools, hospitals, professionals in those two areas?
They're both relative, actually. Old South London, Old North London, both have their own clientele. There's hospitals in both ends of town. When JJ was here, she was at Vic Hospital, which is in the south end, and there is a university hospital on campus of the University of Western Ontario. So the properties there, every city has encouraged builders to build in certain areas in order to develop the city north one for a period of time, then south for a period of time. Most of the development in London has been north for the last 20 years, and will be for a little while longer, but they're right up the edge of the city limits. So the next one is they're pushing for south again. And you can see the builders starting to open up the land down there. So it goes in cycles like that. Wherever they're building, usually the resale houses not far away always appreciate at a higher rate too, because those people move from those, there's people that move into these new houses, but the new houses are extremely higher than the resale houses that aren't very far away, maybe 5 minutes away. But what happens is if a resale house has been updated and modified and it modernized a little bit, they're going to challenge the marketplace, but they're also going to find that they can sell for more money, even a short percentage, 2 to 5% higher than they would have if there wasn't a development nearby. Because the builders' houses always, the lots are a lot more expensive. The house and materials are a lot more expensive, especially today. And so you're really, the building of new houses today, I don't find it a very valuable thing, because there's almost an artificial pricing on the wood and the building materials right now. They haven't leveled off
Because of COVID.
because COVID, the supply isn't there. The materials are there, but the people who warehouse it and get it to one point aren't working because they're getting grants to stay home. So, yeah. Anyways,
Okay.
the answer, whoever asked about Old South and Old North,
Yeah.
or North and
North and
South
South.
London, they're pretty close to the same value.
Yeah, well, the other thing too is South London tended to be developed more for, the literal South London was developed more for more blue collar worker, because a lot of people worked in the Ford factory between St. Thomas and London. Southwest London was developed more for professionals. So we have different neighborhoods. All depends on the neighborhood that you're in, and what the kind of development was for. Like if it was for a middle class, more working class, then you have a different type of home. In North London, we tend to have more executive homes, and West London. But right now, the marketplace is absolutely volatile. And part of the problem is, I think in all of North America, and actually in many parts of the world, is supply and demand. Because, and you see the prices go so high because there isn't enough supply. People, let's say older people who've lived in 4-bedroom, 2-story beautiful homes, 25 to 100 square feet to 3,000, and they want to downsize, are saying, well, where will we go? And then they think that their house, maybe will take some of the equity and save some of the equity, but if they want to move to a smaller 2-bedroom condo, it's almost like a lateral move. So there's a lot of people too who are saying, oh, gee, why should we move? And then they don't put their houses on the market. So then there's supply and demand. And part of that demand is because the interest rates are so low. I've never seen interest rates. It's like free money. Yeah. I mean, when I came into this business, the interest rates were at 15.75%, and everybody was dancing in the street because it came down from 22. Mm-hmm. And so this interest rate is also driving this kind of a marketplace. And in Canada, Glenn was doing the numbers in February, trying to figure out why is it from January in our area alone, the prices are jumping. You have a list price, which is reasonable. Somebody's done their job and appraised it properly. And then you see people coming in with offers 100 and 200,000 above the list price. Is because in Canada, we have what's called a stress test, okay, especially, and it used to just be for first-time buyers. Now it's for everybody. Whereas if the interest rates are at 1.7%, the stress test says, let's pretend the interest rates are 4.79%. So if the interest rates go up, we know people can hold on to their houses. Because back in the 1980s, I was working in the bank and investment and mortgaging, and people would just come in who had bought their houses. The interest rates went from, what rate were they?
What, 1980?
Yeah, they went from what, 12% to 22%. Yeah. And so people would come in and just throw their keys on the counter at the bank and run out and leave their homes because they couldn't afford them anymore. So what they tried to do with the stress test is we want to make sure that if the interest rates go up, people will still be able to hang on to their homes. But when Glenn was just doing the numbers in January. He says, why is this happening? Because normally the banks will appraise each property to make sure that it is that their risks are not going to be so high and that it's sold at a proper value. And
yeah, so Canada Mortgage and Housing, as well as the bank, both do appraisals on the house to justify the value of the house so they can finance a property. The thing about the stress test was that was to qualify the first-time buyers and also people moving up. It was to qualify them to make sure that if the rates did go there, right, to 4.79%, they'd still be able to afford it. What we've noticed, though, in the last 4 or 5 months is that the banks are using the differential for themselves. So that spread of 3% is being used by the banks as if they're not concerned about the interest rates going up. But the interest rates will go up because inflation is moving up. It's getting to a point where the interest rates, no matter what anybody says, it's going to affect interest rates. If interest rates go up 1 iota, because I mean it's virtually free money under 2%, then I mean imagine if it goes from 1 3/4 to 2 1/4%. When you really think about it, you're looking at 15% or 20% increase on your monthly payments. Well, if you've already financed yourself to the eyeballs on your budget, you can't afford to have 20% more increase in your monthly payments when your mortgage comes due. So it can really affect you down the road. And most mortgages have a 5-year increments. So they finance a house over 25 and 30 years, but every 5 years it comes due for renewal. Well, in that 5th year, when it comes due, and if the rates are too high, then you're probably going to have to refinance or leave.
Or use all your savings.
You lose.
Just to kind of build your equity again.
Yeah.
And which happened in the 90s.
Okay, we got to let you ask questions so we can.
So you've answered most of the questions that people put up here. And then I guess the only thing that's just left is the down payment part. And then also the investment, real estate as a form of investment. Now we've been talking about it as, a first-time home owners and homeowners packages and all that. So I would let Tolu. Tolu, do you want to ask a question?
I do.
Yes.
So thank you, Glenn and Ingrid, for being here. So Yomi already led into my question. It's really about investment, and I'm just going to ask all the investment questions that we have in one. So first and foremost, starting out, a lot of people want to know what mistakes you made as a new real estate investor. Like when you were starting out in the business, people would like to know what kind of mistakes you made that you think people that want to follow your path should look out for. And then a lot of people are interested in investment properties. So people are asking questions that right now, what is the better choice? Is it for me to invest as a private homeowner, or is it a better choice for me to start with with a rental property? Then someone else asked, what do you think about buying properties for Airbnb? Do you think it's a wise move, or do you think it's something that we should wait on? And I know it's a lot of questions. I can repeat all of them. Someone
That's
else
okay.
was asking about investment properties as well, was asking that what advice do you have for people that want to invest in property for retirement?
Okay, well, Tolu, that's all a good question. Let me start with the first one, or one of the last ones actually. The Airbnb kind of went to the side last year with the fact that nobody's traveling, and so the Airbnb idea, but it's high risk because you're not a hotel owner, but you could get people that go in and absolutely abuse the property in a weekend, and whereas you can have a tenant in a house who's paying for a 1-year lease, and it would take them a whole year to do as much damage as somebody in an Airbnb on one weekend. So you make a lot of money on them in certain areas. The Airbnbs were doing okay around the hospitals, north and south in London.
And in vacation spots.
And in vacation spots, London doesn't have a whole lot to offer, but some cities have actually, Victoria has made rules, Victoria,
That
BC,
bylaw rules.
has made bylaws to stop that kind of rental. Short-term rental is what they're calling it. So it's against the law to have short-term rental in the houses in the core area of Victoria, BC. So they map it out nowadays. So Airbnb it's not a good investment now. Neither are hotels for that matter. But the other thing, okay, let me go back a little bit. So what was the other?
Investing in property for
Okay.
retirement.
Well, let me give you something that was interesting, because when we went to our investment counselor years ago, he said to us, first thing you need to do and aim for is to pay off. And my dad said this to me too. He never invested in the stock market because it was a gamble until he already owned his house cash free. So
Owned all this property.
he had
vacation property.
all of his properties were mortgage free. And it was interesting because years ago when we started to be better off, we went to a finance guy, investment guy, and he told us that first thing, pay off your mortgage, then we'll start investing. And that was probably the wisest, because he said then you don't lose everything that you've got. Because the stock market can be, as everyone has seen, can be quite volatile. But he said also you can take a risk because you're not going to lose anything if you don't have your house tied to it.
Or your properties.
Some people have financed their houses to the eyeballs in order to invest in mutual funds. And at one time that was good, but then all of a sudden it crashed and they still had the financed house. So,
And as for investments, if you're going to buy investment for rental properties, future retirement, same goes, is to try and, first of all, you have to be careful that you're not overpaying for a property, because if you cannot have the property maintain itself, even if you're drawing even, then you have just you've basically bought an investment of loss. And so what you want to do is you want to make sure that whatever you're buying and the price you're paying for it, it will be able to generate enough income to pay for itself. Property taxes, anything else that you include in it, that it pays for itself and a little bit more, and start dropping any extra onto that mortgage, building your equity so that when it's time to retire, that property is paid off. So that the income that you have is basically your added income. Now, the other thing too is with investment properties too, you can use them to kind of lower your taxes, because they there are certain things in there in Canada anyway, and I think in the States it's even better, that can help to, you can claim things against that property. Okay, on a tax level. Now, I'm not an accountant, so I can't give you all that. Our accountant does that. But nevertheless, if you're looking for it for retirement, you've got to pay it down, because otherwise all it is a property that you're building equity in. But if it's retirement age and something happens to the marketplace, which it will, and it goes down, then you can lose on it. So you have to determine, do I want to hold this on as a monthly income supplement, or do I want to hold it on to build equity and sell it and make money on it? And so if you're going to be doing that, that'll be your trigger on exactly what you're going to do with the income coming off of that property and how you're going to use it, either reinvesting it in the property so that you will have extra monthly income supplementation when you retire, or else you can also use it as a leverage property to buy other properties. So sometimes you can do, and some people will leverage their even their residential properties in order to buy investment properties.
kind of like Monopoly.
Kind of like Monopoly, but yes, there's something that's coming into the equation that has never been in North America before, and that is government policies and what's happening within both the US government and the Canadian government, and how they're operating, and how they, well, in Canada and even there, if they have a socialist government, then they don't want to see anybody make money unless it's
Or own property.
or own property. So that's something that you just want to kind of keep in the back of your mind. And we just pray that things change in that regard and they don't come to fruition as they are. But my family comes out of Eastern Europe. And so I've seen some things happen that we have to make sure that we use our voice against policies that could harm us in the future, even in our property ownership.
On a typical purchase, there's like, if you're buying an income property, the most banks want 35% down. So that's a fair chunk of money if you're just starting out. The other thing is land transfer tax. On the average sale here in London, which is about 600,000, the land transfer tax now can be about $8,000 on that price range. So that is something that people pay on closing date. And so we usually tell our clients to hold $10,000 aside for incidentals. For land transfer tax, your lawyer's fees can be about $800 on a purchase, plus your land transfer tax, you're going to be paying them at that part. Plus, there's another thing called the disbursements, which in Ontario, they can be $400 nowadays.
No, disbursements are $1,000.
Are they $1,000 now?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, $1,000. But a lot of that can do with searching of title by the lawyer to make sure there's no cloud on title. The reason they search title is if, just in case the person who just put a new roof on the house, a $15,000 roof, hasn't paid for it, and they're selling the house, and the roofer drives by and sees the sign on the front lawn but hasn't been paid yet, he'll do what they call a mechanic's lien or a judgment on the property. So you hire a lawyer here to do that, to search title, so that you're not saddled with the seller's debts. So he makes sure that it's clear title so that you can put only your debt on it, which is your first mortgage. So that's what they're searching title for. And they're also searching to make sure there's no historic issue with the property, whether they've sold off a piece to the next door neighbor or any of those other things that could come up on a title. So that's why you hire a lawyer to do the transaction for you. You got any more? Did we answer?
We asked that what were the mistakes you made in your early days of investing that you can talk to us about so that we don't make those same mistakes?
I would say the biggest mistake was
Not doing it.
no, not buying enough back then, or even having a God sense that this was going to happen today. But the other thing too is what I would say is one of the biggest mistakes that we made was being afraid not to take a plunge, in those early years. The other thing too, but the biggest thing is to make sure you vet every person who's going to rent from you. And we have a real process. We check references, we check credit. And if it's not you looking after your property, to make sure that you have a really reputable, ethical, honest people who are filled with integrity, who are managing your properties for you. And because a lot of damage can happen by tenants, and that can cost you thousands of dollars. And we have not had very many, but let's put it this way, happened earlier, and that's one of the biggest things that we do. And sometimes we will do it ourselves instead of just and that way. And the other thing too is even now when we're renting our properties and we have COVID and everything else, we will do Zoom interviews, personal interviews. We don't just take somebody because they seem nice on the telephone and they have given us all their friends and relatives as their references. And we call past employers, we call past landlords, everything else like that, because I think that's one of the biggest mistake is renting to the wrong people.
That was my first investment. Was I bought a little bungalow. It was a duplex, a 1-bedroom apartment in the front and 1 bedroom in the back. And
You lived in one.
I lived in the front, and it was great until my tenant in the back decided he didn't want to pay rent anymore, and so I had to evict him, and get another tenant in. And sometimes a single can be a difficult person, but sometimes 2 people are a bigger problem, because I've heard of many nightmares where a guy will cohabitate with a girl who's been a very good tenant, paid all her rent on time and everything, but then this guy comes on the scene who teaches her how not to pay rent. And next thing you know, and we've seen it a few times with our clients, that they have to sell the house because they have tenants that aren't paying their rent at all. And our Landlord Tenant Act here in Ontario is very punitive towards landlords. So you really have to make sure that you get somebody that basically we call it partnering with. So that's why we pray a lot, because the people, we ask God to bring the right people to us so that we can make that proper decision, because otherwise you could be in trouble financially pretty quickly. So a lot of times you're better off to buy your own house first, get settled in it, get your mortgage paid down, and of course the value of the house typically over a 10-year period of time appreciates. And that's why I told you about the areas that I was saying about schools and universities and hospitals, is because typically those areas will appreciate each year at a greater rate than some areas that are closer to factories and other areas like that, or commercial areas even. So that's just a rule of thumb to watch when you're buying or investing.
Okay, leading into what you said, I was going to bring that up already about building around, buying properties around hospitals and schools and things like that where professionals are. I was going to ask you that, would you say that there's a preference for the kind of building one should invest in? Do you think apartments versus single family homes or things like that?
Well, the hard thing is, if you buy an apartment, it's a condo.
Yeah.
Condominium fees always go up. And if people in the building think there's too many people who are non-owner occupied, their boards will sometimes increase the condo fees so that you can't make your bottom line work. We've seen that a lot of times. Although it's great, because if you had a high-rise condo, then you could probably rent it to even seniors in those areas. But the problem is it's getting harder to do that, because condo fees go up faster than because they're on a fixed income. So there's a lot of times that it can make it difficult for you to have a senior who look after it fine, but they can't afford it after a while, because you've got to increase your month. You're allowed about 1.5% increase on your rent this year. And each year it's probably about that you're allowed to increase your rents here in Ontario.
And I guess it all depends on, like, if you're in the US and you are buying, I know there are certain states that are a lot less. Like sometimes I look at the values and I kind of, even when we were driving down to Pensacola last year, the year before,
2019.
And, you're going through, we always pick up occupational hazard, real estate magazines, everything else. And you just kind of go, holy smokes, maybe we should invest in this area here because it's so stinking cheap. But the problem is, if you're an absentee landlord, then you can't look after the property very well. So if you do buy townhouses or condominiums, then you know that the property is going to be looked after, because all the lawns and things like that will be cut properly. Now, if you're going to be investing close to where you are and that you can keep an eye on things, and sometimes what we do too is, even if we rent to a family or anything else, we'll say, okay, you know what, every 2 months we're coming to change the furnace filter. We're coming to service, making sure that all the smoke alarms, so that we actually have access to see what's happening within the property, and that we kind of write that into our lease. And the people that we have renting from us, they're all just, oh, how wonderful, you know, well, we just want to make sure that, you know, all the allergens and everything else, that you've got clean air going through. And what it is it's a means to get into the property, to service the things that need to be serviced, but also to see how it's being maintained. And so, but that you can only do if you live close to your investment. Otherwise, if you're further away, then, you know, condominiums, Glenn talked about the pitfalls of that, but it all depends on where you are, what you're buying, how much equity you've got in there to keep your rents at a still making money, with possible increases in condo fees. And also to make sure that you're buying in a good building. Like there's a couple buildings in London here that the price seems, wow, that looks really good, but oh my goodness, their escrow funds are like dog's breakfast, right? It's just terrible and a bad place to invest. Or they have legal actions against them, like here in London. Great area close to the university, but every unit has a special assessment because they've had to fix a building of $25,000. That is a hefty chunk. So when you're investing in that kind of thing, you want to make sure that the reserve funds, or in the States it's called escrow funds, are really good and high, and that they don't have any lawsuits against them, because then that can cost you, and that they don't have any major problems
with the building.
With the building itself, roof issues where water's coming between the walls, because all those things can be very costly. And in a condominium, it's called a special assessment. Up here, it's called a special assessment that they tack on, and they say, okay, there might be 50 units in here. We're going to divide the $1 million it's going to cost to fix whatever. And then they divide it between each unit, and you have to come up with that cost.
Now, I just ran off. This is a mortgage calculator. This here, I don't know if you can see it there. See, right there. So it's a slide rule. And you can move it this way and that way for 2%, 1%, 20%, or whatever, all the way down to.
You can do it on your computer, but this is much faster.
This is my phone. But what I did was the average condominium fee in London right now is about $400 for a high-rise apartment. It depends. Like it will go up to 500 or 600 if they have a pool and a whole lot of other amenities with the building. But on average, it's 400. The $400 will carry a $96,000 mortgage. So what a lot of times it's encouraged people, even if you could go get a maintenance guy to do the lawns in the summertime and to shovel the driveway in the wintertime, it's about $1,000 for the year. $500 for a contract to do the grass, $500 to do the snow off the driveway in the winter, whether there's a lot of snow or there isn't. So if you look at that, you're saying, well, I'm only spending $1,000 for that, whereas a condo fee is $400 a month. You could buy a house of lesser cost and have it maintained for the tenant, even if, or sometimes we contract, we have our tenant at a reduced cost to remove the snow, right? Because we have a snow blower, so we have it right in her lease, and she likes playing with it anyway. So, but anyways, it's that kind of thing. So you have to look at the value of that condo fee versus can you buy a residential house, a little bungalow with a little lot or whatever. It's easy to maintain because outside the windows are newer, the furnace is newer, the floors are all hard floors, whether they're laminated or hardwood or ceramic. So you're looking for low maintenance on your part. And actually those hard floors and things like that, there's very little that a tenant can do to damage those. When you have carpet or soft floors like that, they can do a lot of damage with that, whether they have an animal, a dog or cat or whatever. And cats are probably the worst. Now, the other thing is what we've done with our house, the house that we rent out, it's a smoke-free, animal-free house. And we put that rate in our lease. And people say, well, you can't discriminate. And we said, well, we can't. We're not discriminating, but we're creating, it's a human rights thing. Those people who have allergies to all of those things, smoke and animals, have a right to have a place to live in a clean environment. So we just say, no, it's human rights. They shouldn't be discriminated against because they want a clean environment.
Or they can't live in something.
They can't live in something that's so. Our tenants all along have been kind enough to not bring in animals after the fact or to smoke or anything in the house. So it's a clean environment. So.
Yeah, and then the other thing too is when you look at, oh shoot, my train of thought just disappeared. Because I'm thinking about showing the house in 2 hours. Sorry. So when you're thinking about, okay, what type of property am I going to do? Even the semi-detached, like if you only have a certain dollar value, if you're looking for investments, then we have what's called a semi-detached. In the States, they call it sometimes different duplex, where they're two individual properties, but they're attached by the center wall. Okay, and so they're not a bad investment. They're also a really good investment if you're first time buying and you're seeing all these prices go crazy and you think, but I want a house that's all my own. Our other daughter, Afa, and her husband, Tolu, we said, listen, guys, you've only got so much money, so let's invest in a semi-detached home. They have a lot of space in them. You might find a single family home, but all I call them is a glorified semi. But they cost you almost $80,000, $90,000 more, $100,000 to $150,000 more, depending. And so with Afa and Tolu, we just said, just take care of your property. And with investments, the only thing that I would say, the biggest mistake anybody makes, and we have not made this mistake because we've seen lots of other people make mistakes, keep your property in good order. Don't become a slum landlord. Make sure your roof is in good condition. Make sure the windows are in good condition. Make sure that the street, your curb appeal, because the other thing too is if you're in a neighborhood that has let's say residential, and you have neighbors who are homeowners
and care for their
lots, you don't want to devalue your property and you don't want to devalue their property by not maintaining the exterior of the property.
When we have our work done, we have it done by professionals. The reason we do that is because we show the tenants that we care. And if it's in tip-top shape when you go to rent it out, usually the tenants want to keep it that way. I mean, you can attract the very best tenants. We've had tenants who've wanted to come back to our house because they knew when there was something wrong, we fixed it right away. So, if I couldn't fix it, we had a plumber in, or we had somebody else come in that was a professional.
Yeah.
But
JJ can attest. She's been one of our tenants. That's how we first kind of got to know her. We knew her cousin, but when we got to know her when she first came to Canada, she stayed in the house that we have close to the university. But that's an important thing to make sure, because otherwise you will lose big time. You'll lose in the quality of tenants you have. You'll lose in the neighborhood respect, and you'll lose in value. So that would be one of the biggest things. And we haven't made very many mistakes in investment because we see other people's mistakes and you learn from other people's mistakes. Yeah. And those are the big key points, is make sure you maintain the property, keep it looking good. If you have to sacrifice a little bit of your profit in order to maintain that property and even looking after the grass or the snow or whatever, it's well worth it in the end, because then you get quality tenants and you get a quality rent. Yeah. You can ask for more because your house looks great and people want to rent from you.
And they want to stay there too. And that's a quality tenant. That's what you want. Even though we've allowed ours to discount a little bit now on the longer term tenants, they're all students at
Because
the
of
university, but because of COVID, we gave them a break. We didn't raise rents last year or again this year. And so, but that shows that we just want to respect them and their budgets and all of that kind of thing, because it has cost a lot more even for students and that sort of thing as well. But we do that. But the other thing is, if you have a really good tenant who cares for the property and their room and their part of the property, they're worth their weight in gold. So we treat them that way. We give them a little bit of break on, and they keep the house clean, you know. So.
And the other thing too, you were talking about down payment. I mean, as a first-time buyer here, you're allowed to only have 5% down. You just want to make sure that you're going to be able to afford it.
Up to a certain price range. Once you're over 400,000, you have to have 10% down. And in Toronto, I think you have to have more than that.
Because
like
otherwise you can't afford it. But the other thing too is when you're buying a home, Glenn mentioned legal fees, disbursements. So legal fees and disbursements come out to about $2,000. Then you have, this is above your down payment. Then you have in Canada what we call the land transfer tax. In Ontario, NDP, lovely group of individuals in 1992, rose that up. And so now we pay a certain percentage. And then the other thing too is instead of having surveys done, this was brought up from the States and we adopted it in Canada where we use a title insurance. It's a lot cheaper than having a survey done. A survey can cost you anywhere between $850 and $1,000. Whereas title insurance is where a title insurance company will do the survey for you at probably about $290. They own the survey, but they also guarantee the property boundaries, right? So anything within those boundaries, they're guaranteeing that the boundaries are proper. And for any mortgage holder, they want to make sure that you either have a survey or that you have title insurance. But title insurance is an easier way, and it is a lot less money.
So we have another question about the home equity line of credit, HELOC. Someone wants to know what the pros and cons are, and that kind of refinance mortgage be switched to them.
Well, a line of credit is a second mortgage. Okay. Basically, the home equity line of credit. Let me give you a fair warning too. There's some banks out there that are giving you what they're calling the collateral mortgage. So the collateral mortgage, and I'll just give you easy numbers. Okay, let's say the house is $100,000 house. You put 10% down, and so your mortgage is $90,000. The collateral mortgage is the bank will say, well, we'll give you $90,000 mortgage, but we will give you 15% over and above that for home improvements, for hardwood floors, or for roof, or for windows, or what to paint it. Who knows? But so we'll give you access to another 15%. Well, they're assuming that the house will be worth more after you use that money. However, what a lot of people don't know is that is a second mortgage, and it is registered on title as if you have a $105,000 mortgage. Okay, so that equity or collateral home equity line of credit has just let's put it this way, and I'll give you the same numbers. A fellow bought a house with those numbers, let's say $100,000, $90,000 mortgage with $15,000 line of credit on it. He had $105,000 owing on his house. He's been there for a couple of years, and he wanted to borrow $20,000 to put a sunroom on the back of the house. The sunroom was $20,000. He went to the bank, to another bank, to see if he could roll his bank to increase his mortgage, basically thinking that he only had $90,000 mortgage, and thinking also that his house is now worth $130,000 anyway. But they said, well, no, when you refinance, we'll only give you 75% of the value of your property. So they said, we can't give you anything to do that sunroom on your house. Maybe you should go back to your old mortgage company. Well, the whole idea behind the collateral mortgage is to make sure you don't go to any other company. All they wanted was a line of credit to do that $20,000 sunroom. And they thought, if it's a line of credit, we can pay it off quicker because you only pay interest on it, or you can pay in large chunks at any given time without penalty. So he thought, well, I don't have the room in my financing package on my house and the equity, even though the house is worth 120 or 130 even now, I don't have enough room in there to be able to borrow a collateral line of credit. So anyways, as it turns out, that's what the collateral mortgage does. The line of credit is fine for financing. It's something you can pay off fast. I wouldn't use it to borrow for a down payment, though. You should never borrow your down payment because it will just. I did that back in the 80s, but that was when the credit unions weren't deemed to be a bank. So the banks didn't know that you borrowed it, but now they are a bank. So
Somebody asked another question. I only got part of it. So is the HOLAC, is it a HOLAC that I saw?
The home
Hello,
owners
Kasima's cashback.
line of credit.
Oh, same as cashback. Okay, the same as cashback.
what is that?
A home equity.
The home equity.
Equity
Home
line.
equity line of credit.
Is that the same as the cashback?
Home equity line of credit, yeah.
It's
It's not cash back. That would be the same as that collateral loan. Home equity line of credit, it's the same thing. If your house is, let's say, worth $400,000 and you and it's gone up in value from 250 or something like that. So let's say you only have a mortgage of $225,000. You have an equity in there of 225,000 all the way up to 400,000, right? So you have 175,000 equity in your property. So a home equity line of credit they'll lend you on a portion of that up to 75% of the value of your property. So they would only probably go up to $300,000 with your home equity line of credit.
and the cashback is
In Canada, anyway.
Yeah, in Canada, and the cashback is usually nothing's for free. So a cashback is usually where your interest rate is actually a little bit higher.
Right.
So you're basically borrowing against yourself. So your interest rate, everybody else might be getting, let's say 1.7, but with a cashback, you're paying 2.4. So basically what they're doing is they're giving you a cashback, loaning it back to you, basically. But because they're charging you a higher interest rate. So it sounds really good. Actually, in the 80s, I mean, in the 90s and early 2000, there was a lot of cashback mortgages, but you were usually paying a little bit higher interest rate. So you're actually paying for it, but they're handing it to you.
Just trying to think of.
We've only got about 5 minutes.
Okay. There's always other schemes out there. Like right now, when the market is booming high, there's all these people that go out there to tell everybody how to make money by asking the seller to hold a mortgage and to do all of that. Well, those people only surface when the market is really good, but the time they actually made their money was when the market was flat and dead. So sellers were willing to hold a mortgage for you in order to help you create a down payment on that purchase. And, you know, it was there's a lot of scams that come out of that kind of thing, but they're writing the book on it now. And so they're selling it when the market's good. So they made their money though when the market was bad. So just so you know.
And the other thing too that I would say is even in the marketplace as you see it now, whatever you do, don't panic. I mean, one of the things that we have seen and we kind of smile to ourselves when we hear the comments by realtors saying my goodness, the prices are never going to go down. You're never going to be able to buy, all that kind of stuff. That kind of panic talk is the beginning of the end, right?
We say that's the earmarks of the death of a booming market.
Of a bubble. And so, because we've seen it. Glen's been in it
45 years.
45 years. You've seen three bursting times. I've seen a couple.
Actually, if any of you are looking at it and need to have more specific answers, you can get contact info from JJ, and we'd be happy to help you out. In fact, no matter where you are, like there's an unwritten rule in across Canada, actually North America, that if we refer a buyer to an agent, then or they refer them to us, it's automatic. We just give 25% of our part of the commission,
but we can stay in
to the other
partnership.
realtor. Just that way, that gives us a right to quiz. Actually, we pick a lot of times. We've picked realtors in California, in New York. We've picked them in BC, all over Canada, and the reason for our client, because we try to match them personality wise. We don't always go for the top agent. Usually a top or second top agent is highly competitive, and they're all about numbers and not about you. And we usually pick an average who works very, very hard and has a client and has knowledge. We usually pick somebody who's had a few years, and we have another way of quizzing too. We actually will call their office and talk to their secretary, sales secretary, and ask them a little bit about that agent and how they treat the sales secretary. Because we have worked in large offices, and we know that the sales secretary is kind of like the centerpiece of the office, and if they're mistreated by certain agents, and a lot of times it's the top agents who think they're the only person in the office, it's the ones who care for the secretary and how hard they're being worked. Those are the ones we like to work with because they'll care for the client as well. So it's just, that's one of our rules of thumb when we pick agents. But we've been successful in it. We've never had anybody who, some people say, what'd you do, a psychoanalysis of? Well, we do in a way.
We just have a questionnaire that we ask the same question about 4 or 5 different ways so we can see and make sure that the people are full of integrity and honesty and experience.
Yeah, we've only been caught on that once, and that was a guy from California. He said, you asked me that question, but you asked me that a different way about 5 minutes ago. And I said, oh yeah, well, you're the only one who's caught that. He said, you're trying to find out if I'm honest, aren't you? And I said, absolutely. And he was actually a Christian guy down there. As we found out, good guy. It worked out perfect for our client. Anyway, so just so you know, we'd be happy to help anybody out at any time. And we have a Christian mortgage broker here too, who helps people with investments in that way too, even when they go into rental property for whoever was looking for that. Okay.
Yeah, JJ will have our contact information. It's pretty simple. Even our website's glengordon.com or Ingrid@glengordon.com or Glen@glengordon.com. It's pretty simple. One N on the Glen. And we'd be more than happy to.
Gordon is Gordon.
D-O-N, yeah. And so more than happy. I know this has been quick and we're just going to have to wrap it up because we both have to go show houses this afternoon. And so,
was there anything that somebody felt they really, really absolutely needed to know in the next couple of minutes?
Crowdfunding for real estate and REITs. Can you talk about that? Do you have enough time?
So, somebody was asking about crowdfunding.
Yeah, for real estate and REITs.
REITs. That's real
Real estate investment trusts.
Yes.
Usually you're counting on one person to make those decisions for you. Usually they buy large apartment buildings and things like that. I was thinking about being one of those, there's a name for them, but a person that does and hunts those things down. The problem is some real estate investment trusts buy from other real estate investment trusts, and some of them actually trash buildings and don't look after them. It's like a landlord buying from another landlord, one that looks after the building and one that trashes them. And then the one that trashed it and took it for all the money that was in it from the tenants, and then turns around and sells it. That next person has to do a lot of cleanup. So they're a risky thing right now, I think, real estate.
And I was just actually reading an article about 3 days ago, what's happening in Toronto, and some of these REITs are dumping their properties because there's a lot of people dumping apartments because even those are getting bidding on them, right? So they're kind of getting out while everything's high. But the problem is if you pay too much for a property, you have to raise the rent, and then you have empty buildings because people can't afford them.
And some of those buildings are emptying in Toronto right now because of the COVID, because all the amenities are shut down in those buildings. And the reason people were living in Toronto was because there was you had
the restaurants,
you had the
theater,
entertainment
everything.
business, you had everything that any young couple would really want, plus good incomes, because it's an expensive city to live in. But the problem with that was with the lockdowns, people are just moving out. They're just saying, I've had enough of it. I can work remotely, so let's move to London. And so now they have a term called drive till you can afford it. And so that's what happens is it's just like a rock in a pond. The ripple effect is moving out. We have people moving out into rural communities that only have a booming market once every 30 years. So when they try to come back to London, London will have already gone ahead by another 15%, but that area would have only gone up 1% per annum. So they would never catch up. They'd have to come in with more cash down payment. And so they actually put themselves behind the 8 ball when it comes to moving back to the main center. So the closer you can stay to the main center of your workplace or whatever, the better it is. Or you just wait it out until it settles down, and it will. It always does.
Okay, so we just want to say thank you very much. It's been so insightful. We learned a lot. And then
I hope so.
Yeah,
That was kind of that we just sped through things. Normally we sit down with somebody for 2 or 3 hours just answering their questions and helping them sort through the whole process of buying real estate or selling it.
Yes, so there are more questions, but then people would reach out to you individually, and
Sure.
So and if they have more, questions, and I know you'll be more than happy to help them out here. So thank you very much, and just from all of us, we have a lot of thank you messages. Victor says this is so amazing, thank you. Sarah said wisdom of the old. Thank you very much. Somebody said thank you for sharing from your heart. And somebody said, thank you. This is so insightful and eye-opening. So I just want to give Samuel in 1 minute to just give a vote of thanks to Glen and Ingrid. Samuel, are you there?
Where's Selma?
Okay, thank you very much, Glen and Ingrid. We are so grateful for the insightful session that you've just had with us. We really appreciate you, and we are better off with all the information that you've provided for us. And trust me, this is not just an eye-opener for all of us. It is the beginning of new things to come, because definitely we will put this to use, and I'm pretty sure we will meet you at the top, because we know you've gone ahead to prepare the way, and we are coming right behind you, and we will definitely make you proud. On behalf of everyone in the group of the Arimathian Finance Group, we deeply appreciate you, and we pray that God will continue to establish you. He will make your business to grow stronger and stronger. And not only will you give advice and counsel to small Zoom sessions, you will definitely stand before state governments, states, parliaments, and United Nations, World Economic Forum, to provide your depth of understanding and wisdom to them. We celebrate you, and we thank you very much, and we look forward maybe in the nearest future to another time of deep insight and deep revelation from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our pleasure. God bless you all.
Thank
In
you.
your search.
Thank you.
We really
Thank you.
appreciate you. Thank you.
Good to see your face, Shay. I miss you.
See you all. Who said the wisdom of
I'll
old?
call you guys. Bye. Thanks for showing up.
Who said that comment? Wisdom of the old. Oh, that's Sarah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sarah.
You have a wonderful, wonderful
God bless you
afternoon.
all.
Sorry, we have to leave you. I'm just about a 30-minute drive show, so.
God bless you all. Thank you very much.
I got.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. But we have people leaving already. I forgot I was going to say.
You don't tell them that this meeting is jacked.
If you can, please wait behind. If you can.
Thank you, Jaja. Thank you so much, Yami. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaja. Thanks a lot.
Abba.
Thank
you, Jaja. No problem.
Thank you, Jaja. I'm going to be taking care of my house differently as a tenant. I'm going to be taking care of it like a landlord.
Take care of it. You guys, I have to. 1 year was here because I knew I didn't have a choice. They're going to ask me several questions if I didn't show up. So I just had to kind of stay here, but I have to run. But yeah, I'm glad you guys. Yeah. All right.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye,
Thanks, guys.
everyone. Bye. Bye. Thank you so much. I learned so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Thank you.
If you can wait behind Atumba, Sam.
It's like everybody has gone. It's like you're going to hold a meeting tomorrow for like 10 minutes.
Maybe it's, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
On the
yeah.
group. I'll into.
Yeah, just like a 10-minute meeting because we have to talk about the CSR.
I totally
Okay.
forgot.
Yes.
I was going to say it on the group, but I forgot.
Okay, you can say on the group chat. It's just 10 minutes, like nothing long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we leaving it till tomorrow?
Yes. I think we should leave it.
What?
I say you have raps.
What is?
Why do you think I chose him?
Bad guy. In fact, you have to hail me and I write it down. So one day when I'm like, like, this girl.
So good.
Man, you
So
guys,
good.
thanks a lot. Yomi, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you also.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you also. Yeah. So are we leaving the meeting till tomorrow then?
Yes, because everyone has left, but the only three that are here. So.
Yes.
Okay. All right. No problem. But what do you think?
I only have 10 minutes for you tomorrow. I've told you now.
Yeah, it will just be only 10 minutes.
Yeah, but what do you think about the page? Have you taken a look at
I
it?
haven't looked at it. That's why I said tomorrow, to be fair.
Okay.
Yes. And Yomi, look at it too. Have you looked at it?
I did.
No, then if Yomi has looked at it, I've looked at it now.
No, I think you should also look at it. It's actually very good. I totally am all for it. Yes, cerebral palsy. You know, it's something that is not really talked about a lot. But then I think it's a good cause. And then tomorrow, what we just need to do is just try to, tell people, carry people along and see how far we can go in terms of donation.
Yeah. No, so that's prayer. People that will not show up for free events. God, please.
And the question I have actually is, while setting it up, I had to put in my details. Oh. And one of the things is that once the donations are complete, they will send me a check. So I'm thinking, how do we, fine tune all those details on getting the check? Do I still go ahead with my details, or do we get a contact from the Cerebral Palsy Center themselves so that they will be the recipient of the check when it eventually is issued?
That will work better for, and to keep us clean too,
Exactly.
Yeah, so that would be better.
Exactly. And then another thing is, while setting it up, I set it up as a Canadian account. So the money is going to be in Canadian dollars, but I would prefer it's in US dollars, which will be easier to transit to Nigeria. So, so in that regard, I don't know, maybe Tolu, you would have to be the one to set up the GoFundMe account. Yeah, it's just to make it easier to transit, or maybe Victor will do that so that, if it's in US dollars, it's easier to pass on to Nigeria. And then if it's going to be in the name of somebody from the CPC, then it also makes it more transparent because they are in charge of collecting the funds and we are just, mobilizing the funds for them.
Okay. Yeah, I think that CPC one is better. Let them collect all the money, whatever is raised.
Okay.
So nobody says, oh, they raised so amounts.
Exactly.
So amount. Let it go straight to them. So if you can contact them to give us their details immediately.
Perfect. I'll use the phone numbers on the website and the email on the website to send correspondence to them right away, and then I'll wait to hear back from them. Most importantly, I will try to see if I can get the attention of the convener. That's like the coordinator of that entire thing, so that she will be the recipient, and then we'll just put our details in there, and then we'll mobilize the funds.
Okay. There's someone I know. I'll ask her. I know she does something for some cerebral palsy thing, and I'm not sure it can be there are that many of them. So if it's the same thing, I'll ask her if she knows the person as well.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Well, welcome, and do have a beautiful weekend.
And I'll see you tomorrow.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
My leader. Go and sleep.
I remain loyal.
Now you can go. All right.
I can't sleep again. I'm awake now.
Yeah, awake. Okay.
Okay. No problem. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Till tomorrow.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.